Welcome back to the channel. The story we are following today is unfolding in the Middle East, and it is one of the most serious geopolitical developments in recent years. Saudi Arabia's bold move against Israel has shaken analysts and policymakers around the globe. The question that many are now asking is simple yet alarming. Is Israel truly ready for war if this confrontation escalates beyond words and warnings? For decades, the relationship between Saudi Arabia and Israel has been marked by mistrust, hostility, and more recently, cautious attempts at quiet dialogue. Saudi Arabia, as the custodian of Islam's holiest sites in Mecca and Medina, carries enormous weight in the Arab and Muslim world. For many years, its official stance toward Israel reflected the collective Arab position that normalization could not happen until the Palestinian issue was resolved in a just and lasting way. Israel, on the other hand, has pursued policies that prioritized its own security and territorial objectives, often at the expense of Palestinian aspirations. These contradictions created an uneasy status quo. But in recent years, winds of change seem to sweep through the region. The Abraham Accords brought Israel into open relations with the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan. Many observers speculated that Saudi Arabia might one day follow, despite its cautious denials. Behind closed doors, there were whispers of meetings, discussions on trade, and even security cooperation against mutual threats like Iran. The possibility of a new Middle East, one where Israel and Saudi Arabia could cooperate, was actively discussed in Washington, Tel Aviv, and Riyadh. That optimism, however, appears to have hit a wall. Recent events on the ground in Gaza, Jerusalem, and the West Bank reignited tensions and triggered widespread outrage across the Arab world. For Saudi Arabia, the political cost of ignoring these developments became too high. The kingdom could not remain silent while images of bombed neighborhoods, displaced families, and clashes at holy sites flooded media screens. The leadership in Riyadh recognized that failing to act would weaken its credibility at home and abroad. The bold move came in the form of a direct warning to Israel. Saudi officials stated in unmistakable terms that continued aggression, particularly toward Palestinian civilians and sacred sites, would lead to consequences. The tone was not one of quiet diplomacy, but of open confrontation. For a country like Saudi Arabia, which has historically preferred subtle signals and calculated language, this was a dramatic escalation. It was not just a warning to Israel, but a message to the entire world. Riyadh was declaring that it was willing to step forward and challenge the status quo. The immediate question is whether Israel is prepared for such a challenge. Militarily, Israel has long considered itself the most capable power in the region. Its defense forces are well equipped, its intelligence services are renowned, and its missile defense systems have intercepted countless threats. From the Six-Day War to more recent operations in Gaza and Syria, Israel has demonstrated its ability to act decisively. But Saudi Arabia is not Hamas or Hezbollah. It is a state with immense financial resources, access to advanced weaponry, and the potential to rally allies across the region. Facing Saudi Arabia would be a fundamentally different kind of confrontation for Israel. To understand why this is so significant, one must consider the broader strategic environment. Israel has always relied on its qualitative military edge, supported heavily by U.S. assistance. It has invested in cutting-edge technology, cyber capabilities, and one of the most advanced air forces in the world. But Saudi Arabia's defense budget dwarfs many of its neighbors. It spends billions of dollars annually on state-of-the-art fighter jets, missile systems, and naval equipment purchased from the United States, the United Kingdom, and other suppliers. While critics argue that Saudi Arabia lacks the operational experience and training of Israel, the raw firepower is undeniable. A conflict between these two nations would not resemble the asymmetrical wars Israel is accustomed to. Economics add another layer of complexity. Saudi Arabia's position as the world's largest oil exporter gives it extraordinary leverage. A war that disrupts Saudi oil production or shipping in the Gulf would send global energy markets into turmoil. Prices at gas stations in the United States, Europe, and Asia would skyrocket. This would immediately internationalize the conflict, drawing in powers far beyond the Middle East. Israel knows this, and so do its allies. A war with Saudi Arabia would not be confined to battlefields. It would ripple across the global economy in ways that no one can afford to ignore. Then there is the question of alliances. Israel has always depended on unwavering American support. Successive administrations in Washington have pledged to ensure Israel's security, often at significant diplomatic cost. Saudi Arabia, however, has also been a critical ally for the United States, not only for energy, but also for stability in the Gulf. A direct clash between Riyadh and Tel Aviv would place Washington in an impossible position. Who does the United States support? How does it maintain its credibility with both nations when they are on opposite sides of a potential war? These are the kinds of dilemmas that could redefine American foreign policy in the Middle East. Iran lurks in the background as another decisive factor. Tehran has long opposed Israel and viewed Saudi Arabia as a rival for regional dominance. If Riyadh and Tel Aviv inch closer to open conflict, Iran would stand to benefit. It could exploit the situation by strengthening ties with Saudi Arabia or using proxies to pressure Israel even further. This is why many analysts believe that Iran is carefully watching the developments, waiting for the right moment to insert itself into the equation. For Israel, this creates the nightmare scenario of a two-front or even three-front conflict, where it faces Saudi Arabia directly while Iran and its proxies escalate hostilities from other directions. Domestically, both nations face unique pressures. In Saudi Arabia, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has built his leadership around the ambitious Vision 2030 plan. He wants to modernize the economy, diversify away from oil, and transform the kingdom into a hub of innovation and tourism. War with Israel could derail those goals, drain financial resources, and create instability that scares off investors. Yet at the same time, the Crown Prince cannot ignore the demands of his citizens and the broader Muslim community. To remain silent in the face of Israeli actions would risk his legitimacy. That tension is what fuels Riyadh's boldness. It is an attempt to balance modernization with leadership on core Arab issues. Israel's domestic pressures are no less intense. Its political landscape is deeply divided, with frequent elections and fragile coalitions. Public opinion is split between those who demand a strong response to any external challenge and those who fear that constant conflict will isolate the country further. The leadership in Tel Aviv must calculate not only military risks, but also political survival. Facing off against Saudi Arabia could rally nationalist sentiment, but it could also expose Israel to unprecedented vulnerabilities. In this environment, the role of the media and public perception cannot be overstated. Around the world, news outlets amplify every statement, every troop movement, every image of suffering. Social media, with its rapid spread of hashtags and viral posts, escalates tensions even further. Narratives of injustice, resistance, and defiance spread quickly, often outpacing official statements. In Saudi Arabia, this creates pressure on the leadership to be firm and uncompromising. In Israel, it reinforces the sense of isolation and siege mentality that has long shaped national policy. The danger here is that public pressure leaves little room for compromise or diplomacy. The potential scenarios are alarming. One possibility is a war of words and symbolic gestures where both sides escalate rhetorically but avoid direct conflict. Another scenario is limited clashes, perhaps through cyber attacks, economic pressure, or proxy forces in places like Yemen or Syria. The worst case scenario, of course, is open war, where Saudi and Israeli forces confront each other directly. Such a conflict would almost certainly draw in other nations, either through alliances or economic fallout. Shipping lanes through the Red Sea and the Strait of Hormuz could be targeted, oil prices could soar, and global markets could crash. What is striking in all of this is the sense of unpredictability. Leaders in Riyadh and Tel Aviv may not seek full-scale war, but history in the Middle East shows that even a small miscalculation can ignite a larger blaze. A single airstrike, a single missile, or even a clash at a holy site could set events into motion that no one can fully control. The stakes are incredibly high, not just for the two nations, but for the entire world. As this crisis unfolds, the world waits and watches. Diplomats scramble behind the scenes, urging restraint. The United Nations calls for dialogue, while European capitals warn of catastrophic consequences. Yet the path forward is uncertain. Will Saudi Arabia and Israel step back from the brink, recognizing the cost of confrontation, or will pride, pressure, and politics push them into a war that no one truly wants for now? The boldness of Saudi Arabia has reshaped the conversation. Israel can no longer assume that Arab states will remain passive or silent. The dynamics of the region are changing, and with them, the future of peace and conflict in the Middle East. This is not just a story of two nations. It is a story of global significance, one that could affect energy prices, international alliances, and the stability of a region that has seen too much bloodshed already. As citizens of the world, we can only hope that wisdom prevails. The leaders of Saudi Arabia and Israel face choices that will define not only their own nations, but also the trajectory of an entire region. In a world already facing wars, climate crisis, and economic instability, another conflict in the Middle East is the last thing humanity needs. Yet history teaches us that bold moves, when met with defiance, can spiral out of control. Whether this moment becomes a turning point for peace or a descent into war depends entirely on the decisions being made right now behind closed doors in Riyadh and Tel Aviv.